Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today we'll learn Masechtas Sanhedrin daf Pei Aleph. We are going to begin on Pei Aleph Amud Aleph by the new Mishnah. It says the Masnis. The Mishnah is Chaim B'Shtei Misois. So a person committed two separate crimes in which there are two different death penalties. We know that there's Arba Misos based in Skila Sreif Herg V'Chenek. And what happens if there's two death penalties? So which one do we do? So based in Nidain B'Chamura, we give them the more strict of the punishments. So let's keep it pashut as the Machlokes Tanakam Rav Shimon. But let's say one person did a crime in which the punishment is skila, and that individual also did something which the punishment is chenek. So even though he's chayav two misos, we're going to give the more strict, which everyone of course holds skila is more chamer than chenek. Over aveira shenischayev shtei misos nidan b'chamura. Let's say you did one aveira and there's two misos attached to it. And Rashi reminds us of what the Gemara is going to say. For example, the Isser of Chamoisai, having tashmish with your mother-in-law, and she happens to also be an Eishes Ish. So you violated Chamasai, and you've also violated Eishes Ish. So I didn't need him a Chamura. So Chamoisai is the death penalty of Sreif, which is more Chamer than Eishes Ish, which is Chenek. You should do the first Zika. The Gemara is going to explain what that means, so we don't need to explain it now. Says the Gemara, so Pshita, obviously, that's what you should do. You're going to give the less punishment. Ilis guri isgur. The fact that he is chayav two punishments, you should give him the less death penalty, but the guy who's only chayav skila, he gets skila. It doesn't make any sense. So Amar Rabba, Hakmai Skina Kagain, Sha'abra Avera Kala. He violated a minor Avera, if you will. V'nigbar Dino Aver Kal. There's already been a Gemara Din on this individual regarding this particular Avera. He's found guilty, and that's it. Because of Aver Chamura. And then afterwards, there's an Avera Chamura that he also did. So Sagadat Ramida Kivan Din Nigmar Dino Avera Kala Hai Gaver Katilahu Kamashmuan. You would think, since, again, let's say the first thing he did, which he'd be chayav chenek for, is Gemara Din who's about to get killed, who's going to get sentenced to death with chenek. And then he ends up doing another avera, which the Chil Shabbos, Marhesia, which is an Isser Skila. So you would think, well, maybe you don't give him Skila in that case, because after all, he was already a dead man. He was already chayav Misa. Kamashmon will still give him the stricter punishment. Bomine avod Rabbi Achor avod Rabbi Yosef Barchama. He asked a question about Rabbi Marnasim. Menaha Milsa. How do we know the Yamar Rabbanan, that which the Rabbanan say that Mishas Chayav Shnei Misas based in Nidam Chamura? How do we know that we give them more strict punishment? Because the pasuk says in Yecheskel, V'hoylid ben Paritz, that regarding this person ben Paritz who was Shoifech Dam, the Geimer regarding the death penalty of murder. Okay. And then it says, Gomer, El Harim Ochal, regarding the mountains consumed, Yes, Eishes Re'ehu Tame, and regarding his friend's wife, impurified, Vel Hagalulim Nosaenav, and regarding these Hagilulim, he cast his eyes. So now we're going to interpret this pasuk. First of all, V'hoylid ben Pachitz, what exactly is this? It means Shevich Dam, so it's B'sayif. So this person is chayiv sayif. We know a person who murders, the punishment is the sword. Then it says this eishes re'eu time zu eishes ish b'chenek. So this person also was committed adultery, which the punishment is chenek. So he's chayiv sayif and he's chayiv chenek. Vel hagilulim naso avoinam zu but is kachavim b'skila. So we're talking about the gilulim is a reference to avodah zarah, and he's chayiv skila. So he has all these death penalties. 3 of the 4. V'ksiv moisumos dameboy. So you have a skila. It says damebo. The punishment should be that this person should get skila. Why? Because it says Rashi hold demand bomb b'skila. Anytime we say demand bomb, it's a reference to skila. So Maskav Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak ema kul b'skila. Maybe he actually did an avera in which it wasn't chenek or saif or skila. Maybe all 3 of these things he did was something he'd be chayav skila for, and therefore he can't learn out from. For example, v'hoyel ben parat shevich dam ze ben saramayra. Maybe we're talking about someone who is a ben saramayra, which means not that necessarily he did murder someone, but it's al shem saifai that we're concerned that he's going to kill someone on the Parshas Drachim by the crossroads. So he didn't murder anyone yet, but if we don't sentence him to death early, we see that this is the direction he's going to take. He will be a Shevech Dam. So maybe that's what it's talking about. He says, Ben Saramar. And the punishment over this is the Beskila. We know that when it comes to a person who takes a Naira who has Erison, at that point, it's the Beskila. That death penalty is also Skila. So, in fact, as we know, the punishment for avodah zarah is skila. The point is, how do we learn out these are different punishments, then we give them more strict punishment? So, so what exactly is the cheskel adding that this guy is chayiv skila? It's obviously he should be chayiv skila because he did 3 averos to be chayiv skila for. What's the chiddush? Right? Even if he did 1, he'd be chayiv skila. So what is he adding? It must be he's coming to tell you that there was other death penalties, but nonetheless will still give skila. So Dilma Torah Kamahader, maybe he's just explaining some seemingly basic concepts in the Torah, and there's no big deal. We find this often, that sometimes the Torah just repeats itself, and maybe Cheskel is just explaining what's going to happen, not necessarily for a huge chiddush. So maybe that's all it's coming to tell. So Imkain Iboyu Hadura Kihechi di Hadura Moshe Rabbeinu. It should have been repeated in a similar way that Moshe Rabbeinu did it. So the fact that he said it in a different context, different language, then itself alludes to the fact that he's trying to teach a chiddush here. Darish Rav Acha Rav Chanina Ma'nechsib. How do we darshan this pasuk in Yecheskel? It says Eloharim lo oichel, regarding the mountains don't consume. That you should not rely on the schus of your forefathers. So says Rashi, that you don't need the schus of your forefathers. Now, you shouldn't rely on what your fathers did. You should be independently chashiv enough to be able to be standing on your own feet. The ain of loy noisa el gilul base Yisrael shall have become a zakufa. When it says that you did not lift up toward the gilul base Yisrael, it means you did not walk with an upright stature, which shows signs of gaiva, of haughtiness. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you cohabited with your friend's wife, but similar, going into a place that doesn't belong to you, or taking a woman that doesn't belong to you, is also taking a position or taking a job which is really your friend's job. Doesn't mean literally that you didn't have tashmish with your wife while she's a nida, but it means that you didn't enter into the kupa shel tzedakah. It says Rashi, shu davar gnai will adam hagain. It would be a disgrace to do for an upright person to do so. The ksiv tzadiku chaya yichye, that this person is a tzaddik, he should live. Okay. Shahaya Rabbi Gamliel Magila Mikrazeh Hazeh. When we'll reach this pasuk, he boy used to cry. Yemer Mandi Abedul Kulu Hudachai B'Chadim Ayulo. So it's like devastating. If you do all of these things, you're a big tzaddik. Only then you're going to live. Otherwise, not. Sarmalei Rabbi Kiva El Miata. If you want to tell me it means it's an all or nothing type of deal, the pasuk says Al Tetalma B'Chaleilah. Don't become tamei with all of these. So achanam b'kuhu in b'chadam minayu lo. It'll be achas mikol eile hachanam b'achas mikol eile. It doesn't mean you only become tamei if you come in contact with all of these forms of tuma. Any contact with any of these categories, you're going to be tamei. So too, if you do any of these things, then you will live. Question 9. El ha'him lo'echav einav lo nasa el guli beis Yisrael ve'el eishes re'ehu atimei. So that's not an easy question. You have to know them all. So he says, so he that is a hard question to remember all those pieces, but that is what is being asked. Okay, no questions yet for TA. This is actually TB1. And TA1 is around the corner. Okay. All right, let's keep going then. So, of our Aveira. So he said that in the Mishnah, if you did an Aveira, which is Chayav Shtei Misos, either you get the more strict one, or Rabbi Yossi says you get the one which is the Zika Rishayna. So let's see the Gemara. Tanya, Keitzad Am Rabbi Yossi Nidim B'Zika Rishayna. What exactly did he mean by that? So, Habal of Chamaisai, let's say she was your mother-in-law, but she was single at the time. But Nasas Eishes Ish. And then she got remarried, and now she's an Eishes Ish. So, Nidim B'Chamaisai. Because what happened first? She was first a mother-in-law. So, therefore, you get the punishment of Chamaisa, which is Sreifa. And that everyone agrees to. Here's the Machlokas. Eishes Ish. Let's say she first got married, and then after she was already married, which makes sense. And then you marry her daughter. So, Vanasas Chamaiso. So now that she's Chamaisai, Nidim Eishes Ish. So since the first thing that happened was Eishes Ish, so then we're going to get the punishment of Chenek and not Sreifa. And that would be the Machlokas. Says Rashi, Chamaiso Vanasas Eishes Ish, Kagoin Nasa Bas Almana. Let's say you married a daughter of an Almana. In other words, she wasn't married at the time. She had a husband who died, and she was single. V'nesser ima mishum chamaisai. So the reason why you could have married her too, but instead you married her daughter. So now there's an isser chamaisai. V'achach nises. Then your mother-in-law got remarried. V'nesula mishum eishes ish. So nidim chamura. So the more chamer one, just the sreifa. The he kadma, because that came first. The truth is, not only did that come first, but even the Tanakam would say you get sreifa because that's the more chamer of the two death penalties. But the machlokus is of im haise eishesish v'nasa chamaiso hayil kishenasa bita. When you married her daughter, kavar haisazu asur love, she was already usher. There was already a zika. There was an iser mishum eishesish. So sulo chayil iser chamaiso iser eishesish. There's a concept called ein iser chal al iser. So therefore, since she was already usher, like how many stacks of usher are you going to make? Usher is usher. So she was already usher to you because of Eishes Ish. So therefore, by being with her, even though she was also your mother-in-law, you'll get the punishment of chenek for Eishes Ish. Again, that's a machlokus, but that's what it means in our Mishnah according to the Shita of Rav Yossi. Amar Rav Ada Barava or Rava. So if let's say originally she was your mother-in-law, definitely gets sreifa. Nidan b'chamaisai. So lidoi namia iser eishes ish. So why don't we also say there's an iser of eishes ish? The ha'am ravavai might Rav Yosef iser moisef, that there's an element of iser moisef. Why is that iser moisef? Iser moisef basically means that even though we don't pile iser chal iser, but if the new Isser is more restrictive, then it's also included. So Chamoso is someone who's Usser to you. But if she's single, anyone else could have married her. Now that she got married, Eishes Ish, she's Usser to everyone as well. That's called Isser Moisef. So maybe we should apply this concept of Isser Moisef. So Amalei Adaba Bere betray Katli Katlis law, says Rashi, Bitmia. I understand. What are you talking about? Emes shechol shteihem olav. Let's say they are both chal. Chamaiso and then eishes ish. Vever sheish bo shtei misosu. Nidim chamura. Right? Vehech atabo l'dainu ap eishes ish. Oh, she's going to get eishes ish. What do you mean? Eishes ish is if you had chamaiso and then eishes ish. So everyone holds you're going to get sreifa anyway. So even if it's true academically that because you hold Isser Moisef, but what does that mean? It has no halachic nafkamina, because regardless, the din is that she's going to get sreifa whether or not you include Eishes Ish. Okay, let's see the next Mishnah. Says Mastisa, Misha Wakavishana. So let's say a person got Malchus, and Rashi says, Shalaka Shtei Pamim, twice already, on two Averis. So basically, so at that point already, we're going to put this person into a kippah. And we saw this already, but the next mission is going to elaborate what that means. Basically, is we're going to see that individual is going to be fed certain foods which will swell their stomach, and they're basically going to die. Which sounds a lot worse than one of the Arba Misos, but that's what it is. As it says it right here, we give them barley, ashechrisu misbakas, until basically their stomach explodes. So again, we don't administer a misa, but we don't want that guy to live either. We're going to see, well, why does that ever make sense? What is the case of actually doing that? So the idea is that if a person continues to commit crimes, and they've even been punished for it, and they continue to commit the crime, so it's clear that they're never going to change, and therefore we should just put them into the kippah. So Gemara says like this: Mishum delakav shana beisam kaintanais kippah. It seems a little extreme over here. Just because this person did a couple of crimes that deserve malchus, you're gonna basically have the guy killed. So I'm Rabbi Yomi, I'm Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish. No, hachaba malchus shall krisos askinan the gababar katalahu. The truth is, if it was just malchus for a losase, that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about someone who committed serious crimes in which the punishment is krisos, which then itself makes you a bar katala. You're not killed b'di adam, but you're being sentenced to a very severe death penalty, a heavenly death penalty, which is even worse than b'di shemayim. So since this guy is already got malchus because he was chayv kares, the kruvihu delo mikrav katle, and since he, the truth is, was close to potentially be killed, we're going to kill him. Bikivan dekam avater la navshe makrivan leila katle. Since this guy's a mavater, he really obviously doesn't care about his own life, because he understands that he keeps committing this crime in which is going to potentially be a death penalty. He could always do tshuva, but instead he keeps violating the crime. So it's clear that he doesn't care about his own life. So since he doesn't care about his own life, so we'll take his life for him by putting him into a kippah. Omerli Rabbi Yaakov, Rabbi Yirmi bar Tachlifa, ha asfroloch b'malki shel kares achas. This is referring to only when he keeps committing the same crime in which there's only one kares. Avol shel shtayim v'shel krisos irisuhu dekatayim v'mo vater kulihai. The fact that he's doing all different sins, but he only did them once each, it just means that he's experimenting in life and he's experiencing different pleasures and he's tasting certain sins. But it doesn't mean he actually wants to die, right? So it's not comparable to a person who continues to do the same thing over and over again. Question 10. Asmi machnisin beisin lakipa kedei lahamisan. So we have one answer, which I think we may have seen already. Mi hischazik barishoi, someone who is strengthening in his wickedness, will aver al averis kares, or he continues to violate kares. Okay, let's keep going. Mi shalaka b'shana. So shana, you did it twice. Af gadol shlish. Shilish, even though it wasn't 3 times. So So this is a famous machlokus, is when do we say we have a chazaka? Is it 2 times or is it 3 times? So this is, let's see this important Rashi. So in Gemara Yevamis, that Nises Larisha Numes, let's say she marries a guy and he dies. And then she marries a second guy and dies. And then a third guy, so she marries. So let's read this again. Nisis Rishon Umeis, so Sheni Umeis, lo Shlishi, Tinasi Revi lo Tinase. Will allow her to get married a third guy, but not a fourth, because the Adtlas Zimni will have Muchzekis Likfores Baleha. How? At what point is there a chazaka that this woman buries her husbands? So that's the question. And this is saying, like our Mishnah, that really it's 2. Our Mishnah apparently says a chazaka is 2 times, which is not like the shita we just said, which was the shita of Rabbi Shimon Gamliel. So apparently our Mishnah is being chaylik with the chazak of 3. So Ravino, Afil Tamer Shemuel. How is that possible? He says 3, and our Mishnah says 2. Ksavar Averos Machzikais. It's actually that he did the Avera 3 times. So in other words, you did Malchus twice, and then the third time that he sins doing the same thing, which is Chaim Karis, then we put him into the Kippah. So the Chazaka is not the Malchus. It's true that he only got Malchus twice on the previous 2 sins. But now the third time he does a sin, we don't give him a third Malchus. Instead, we put him into a Kippah. That's still a Chazaka of 3. Meisvei, Frek the Gemara, Avra Vera Sheshba Malchus. If let's say you did a sin which the punishment is Malchus, Pamishan Mishnia, Malchanoisa, first 2 times with Malchus. Shrish is going to the Kippah, which sounds a lot like what our Mishnah said. Abashol Oimer, Af Bishlishis Malchanoisa, Revis Kain Salas Kippah. So it's actually Machlokas. Do we give him Malchus the 3rd time and it's only the 4th time that he sins? Do we put him in the Kippah or even the 3rd? So my love, is it not? Tekuyama Malchus Machzikais. Really, it's all telling how many Malchus you get. Ubaputa, the Rebbe the whole Machlokas is a Chazaka 3 or 2 times. Whether or not you get Malchus twice or 3 times. Well, the Kuliyama, everyone holds like Rosh Hashanah that you need 3 times. The Marsava Averos Machzikais, the Marsava Malchios Machzikais. The question is, what is the 3 that we're focusing on? 3 sins, and therefore the 3rd time, instead of getting Malchus, we immediately put him in the Kippah. Or no, we need to have Malchus 3 times, and then therefore we have to technically wait until the 4th time he sins in order to put him into the Kippah. V'hadasanya. So that's what we are saying. Okay. V'hadasanya. See if it's Menachusa. Okay. Hisru boy. So you gave this guy Hasra. Just looking at the Rashi over here. B'shasak, and he was silent. Hisru boy, you gave him Hasra. V'hirchin roisho, and he just like shakes his head with some element of acknowledgement. So Parmishan Vishniya, first couple of times, Master and Bo, you give him Hasra. Shlish is Kaisan Lo Kippah. The 3rd time you put him Kippah. Abashoyal Oimer. Apishlish is Master and Bo. You give him Hasra even a 3rd time, and then Revi is Kaisan Lo Kippah. Now, let's go slow. Let's look at Rashi. Vahahacha Malchus Leka. There's no mention, there's no Malchus. Toho Hister Atzmol Malchus. You didn't give him Hasrat for Malchus. Shari Shosak, he was silent. The name of Taima de Abashoyal Misham de Malchus Machzikais. So if the reason is because of Malchus, so there's no, you can't say that here. Well, Huksuk ad Shiyilka v'kivan delaka ad Shlishis loy ayole l'kipa. So let's continue. That's what Rashi explains. What we're going to see now. So again, if we're talking about this case, Abashol says even we'll give Hasar even the 3rd time, then the 4th time we have the kippah. Now Bahasam Malchus Leika. There's no Malchus as we established because he was Shasak. So he wasn't Makabal the Hasra basically to give him Malchus. So b'may kamifli. What's the argument? So Amar Ravina b'kipa sricha Hasra kamifli. The question is, do you need to give Hasra the last time in order to put him into the kippah? That's the whole machlokas, period. So my kippah, what is this? So we kind of talked about it already. Rabbi Yehuda, Moli Kamasai. It's the guy's height. So if you think a prison cell is big or small, this is small. The Hecharamiza, how do we see a hint to a kippah? Amrish Lakish, it says, Tamaisis Rashara. You should kill the wicked evil person. Amrish Lakish, what does it mean in the pasuk? Ki gam lo yada adam es itai. Person does not know his time. Kidogim, just like fish, shenechazim b'metzuda ra, that are in a evil net. My metzuda ra. It's referring to a fish hook. Okay. Anyway, that is the remez, if you will. It says Rashi, Vade halacha Moshe Sinai. This whole notion of a kippah is halacha Moshe Sinai. Hach einish to keep omiu hecharamizim mixus. Maybe there's some hint to it. So basically, the idea is just like a fish that's stuck on a hook and there's nowhere to go. So too is this notion of the language of a kippah. Okay. Okay, let's continue. Says the next Mishnah. So the Masnisin says, a Hayreg Nefesh. You murder someone shlo be'edim without witnesses. That's also Machnisos L'Kipa. So that's the second time. So this was again question 10. When do we put a person to a kippah? Either a person who continues in his wickedness, which was a vera of kares. Alternatively, a person who murdered someone without witnesses. Okay, and we start feeding them, as we saw previously, what we feed them, and they die. Lechem tsar umayim lachatz. It says over here, lechem tsar umayim lachatz, just like bread and water. Okay, fine. So in fact, the Gemara, I don't understand. How do we know, since there's no witnesses, what does that mean? We kill him? How could you kill? How could you put him into a kippah? Maybe he's innocent. He's no innocent guy. Rabbi Edis Miuchedes. We're talking about the case of Edis Miuchedes. So Rashi points out, when the pasuk says, it's brought down in Gemara Makos, that you may have two witnesses, but they didn't see together. So since they didn't see together, therefore, as Rashi says, Kagoyin, Shnaim Royin, Oso Echad Mecholon Zeh, Echad Mecholon Zeh. And it's going on Makos and Davav, basically the end of the first parak over there. We can't kill him there, but it's clear there was two witnesses. Even because it says Lo Yumos al, it says 2 or 3 witnesses you kill, but Lo Yumos al Pied Echad, not with one witness. So if it says Echad, the Gemara says Echad. And then there's 2 witnesses, but they are looking in different windows to see the murder, but they don't see each other. Okay, so therefore, basically, we all know that the guy murdered, but through a technicality, we can't sentence them to death through Mises Beistin. Instead, we put them into the kippah. That's one answer. Alternatively, Shmuel Omer Shlo B'Hasra. There was witnesses, but there was just the technicality of forgetting to give him warning. Rav Chisda Omer Avimi Kagayin the Ischush B'Bedikos, Ischush B'Chakiros, where there was a contradiction with the Bedikos, but not with the Chakiros. Kidinan Masa Ubadak Ben Zake B'Oikse Te'enim. So that he was able to even ask questions. Oh, when it came to where the murder was, and it was by a fig tree. So what exactly did the stems of the figs look like? What did the figs look like? So you could ask all these intricate questions to start making it almost impossible to be able to answer the question, how to do it correctly. It says Rashi, that's bedikos yisera havoy nehid ben zaki paterle mahu hakasha makatola. So it will at least pater him from the based in sentencing them to death. Mu edis emes hu be'ayla kippah. So even though it's true, the based in wouldn't do it, but they would still not have their hands bloody, if you will. Instead, they would put him into a kippah in that situation, because these are obviously very difficult questions to be asked. So they were technically contradicted in the bedikos, but not in the chakiros. Chakiros, you have to be exact. What day was the murder? What was the hour? What was the place? Otherwise, it's edus shiyata yachal hazim, and therefore that would not be edus. So understand, what is it? We give bread and water? Do we give barley? We actually will do this whole process. We give bread and water until his stomach shrinks a little bit. His stomach gets small. In other words, his stomach no longer has desire to consume a lot of food. So we give them the bare minimums, and then as your body expects only to have a little bit, then you give this more intense barley food, and that will cause his stomach to explode. Pretty intense stuff, but that's, I guess the guy committed an intense crime, so therefore that's the punishment. Question TB1. But my commitment Tanakam of Abishol, in Pari Shain Vishnia Malkanois of Shlishis Kainsonos Lakipa, O Shirak Baravias Kainson. Maskana. So let's see if I got this right. I wrote Bahavamina. It only asks for the maskana, but here I am. Bahavamina. Imish chazaka b'sholosh pamim lo. Okay. I don't need to write that. I'm just going to cross that out. Lamaskana im hachazaka rak achar hamalkus rak achar ze kointanos lekipa hapamacheres o vera nasa chazarim who kointanos lekupa achar gimel pamim. That's not the correct answer. Okay, that was also within the framework of the Havamina. Right, we said with regard to Abba Shaul, let's just find this up here, that Abba Shaul said, Af b'shlishis malkana yisrael b'revius kaitzos l'kipa. In the Havamina, we thought it was whether it's 2 or 3, but that's not the maskana. The kuliyama isul hudar shem gamliel v'hacha b'hal kamifli demar savar averos machzikos umar savar malchus machzikos. Maybe I did say that correctly. Show this. That was Abba Shaul, right? Abba Shaul, Omer Av Shlishis Masar this. So, and then we end up saying, Bekipa Sricha Hasra Kimifgi. That's maybe what they're actually looking for. This is TB1. So it's possible that it could be, is it the Avera or is it the Malchus? Okay. So that is right. Chazak rak achar hamalkus or the avera, right? And then lamaskana is does kippah require hasra? Adkan.